January 21st, 1988. New York Susquehanna and Western train SLN 9 shatters the midnight stillness at Newfoundland, New Jersey, as it heads west with a long consist of sea-land double-stack container cars bound for Binghamton, New York. From a weed-encrusted 27-mile-long short line perilously close to abandonment, the Delaware Otsego Corporation has transformed the Susquehanna into a major regional rail system with 549 miles of track. The short local freights which once plodded over the line have been replaced by mile-long transcontinental double-stack container trains. The Susquehanna is back. How this came to pass is one of the great success stories of modern railroading. In the late 1800s, the New York Susquehanna and Western Railroad was a prosperous transportation company. Its primary task was to haul trainloads of coal from eastern Pennsylvania to the port of New York for transshipment to other destinations. The Susquehanna's western terminus was at Gravel Place, Pennsylvania, near Stroudsburg, where freight cars were interchanged with the Lackawanna Railroad. At Gravel Place, the tracks of Susquehanna's subsidiary, Wilkes-Barre and Eastern, extended west to Scranton, where there were other interchange points. The eastern terminus of the line was at Edgewater, New Jersey, where a coal loading facility was established. The railroad's engine terminal and shops were located in nearby Little Ferry. An important branch left the main line at Beaver Lake. The line extended to Hanford, New Jersey, where it connected with the Middletown and Unionville Railroad. This line ran north to an interchange with the Erie and the New York, Ontario, and Western Railroads at Middletown, New York. The continued growth and prosperity of the Susquehanna was viewed as a serious threat by the corporate leadership of the Erie Railroad, which led them to purchase a majority share of Susquehanna stock. By 1898, the Erie was in control of its smaller neighbor. Beginning in 1905, Erie steam locomotives gradually replaced many of the old Susquehanna veterans. The mainstay of the fleet was a group of the famous Russian Decapod 210Os, introduced in 1917. These interesting engines headed most of the heavy freight trains on the railroad and were the Susquehanna's largest class of steam power. This rare film footage shows Decapod number 2453 leaving North Hawthorne, New Jersey, where the Susquehanna's repair shops were located until the late 1950s. The Susquehanna operated an extensive commuter service. Trains originated in the Erie Railroad's Jersey City terminal with connections via ferry to New York City. Primary power for the passenger trains was a small fleet of Pacifics and 10-wheelers, some of which were on lease from the Erie. 460, number 970, one of the leased engines, makes a fine sight as she barks out of North Hawthorne. In 1929, the Depression struck, and the Susquehanna suffered a series of setbacks which nearly killed it. Gas and oil began to replace coal as a fuel, resulting in greatly reduced car loadings for the railroad. By 1937, the Susquehanna filed bankruptcy papers, and Walter Kidd was appointed trustee of the line by the federal courts. The Wilkes-Barre and Eastern, which had been losing money for years, was abandoned early in 1939. The following year, all ties with the Erie were severed. In 1941, the west end of the Susquehanna from Haynesburg, New Jersey to Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania was abandoned. As the United States moved closer to war, however, the Susquehanna's fortunes slowly began to improve. Under Mr. Kidd's leadership, the railway's financial condition began to stabilize. Cars and locomotives were refurbished, and new ACF rail cars were purchased to operate a revamped commuter service from Paterson to New York via a bus connection near the Lincoln Tunnel. The two self-propelled rail cars, numbered 1001 and 1002, were constructed by the American Car and Foundry Company of Berwick, Pennsylvania. Delivered in 1940, the cars were dubbed Streamliners by Mr. Kidd and featured air conditioning and an unusual Swedish-designed semi-diesel pancake engine. This unusual film footage shows the cars in commuter service during the early 40s. To supplement the Streamliners, several additional self-propelled rail cars were purchased. Unlike the Streamliners, these heavier units could also pull a coach or two, enabling them to replace some of the steam-powered commuter runs. Although the ACF Streamliners were a welcome sight for rail fans, their unusual pancake engines were quite unreliable and had an annoying proclivity for catching on fire. On January 20th, 1946, number 1001 was totally destroyed when her engine erupted during a commuter run. Photographer Ted Gay recorded the remains of the once proud rail car after it had been taken to the North Hawthorne shops. Walter Kidd died in 1943 and was replaced by Henry Norton, who continued to make improvements. The first Alco RS-1 diesel switchers, along with several S2 units, began to arrive in 1941, enabling the Susquehanna to proclaim itself completely dieselized by 1945. In 1947, with revenues gained by a dramatic upswing in traffic during World War II, more new diesels were purchased. To upgrade passenger service, a fleet of new, streamlined Budd rail diesel cars arrived in 1950. The RDCs replaced the rail cars on the Paterson shuttle. These units were followed in 1951 by a group of 16 stainless steel commuter coaches. They are shown here in passenger service at several locations along the line. More RS-1s were acquired in 1953. That same year, the railroad emerged from 16 years of bankruptcy. Things were finally looking up for the Susquehanna. Irving Maidman, a New York real estate dealer with no railroad experience, purchased the Susquehanna in 1962, ostensibly to ensure that his properties in Edgewater would continue to receive rail service. Maidman secured a government loan to purchase 3 new EMD GP18 diesels. At the same time, maintenance on the railroad's existing track and equipment was reduced to a bare minimum. The Susquehanna's fortunes continued to decline as Maidman eliminated commuter service in June 1966. By 1969, the line was embargoed west of Sparta Junction. Active Susquehanna trackage continued to shrink as the railroad was further cut back to Green Pond Junction after the washout at Smoke Rise in 1971. One bright spot during this otherwise gloomy period was the return of steam to Susquehanna rails. This occurred in 1973 when the Morris County Central tourist operation relocated from Morristown to the now abandoned Susquehanna trackage between Newfoundland and Beaver Lake. On July 4, 1974, regular tourist operations began, powered by ex-Army 060 number 4039 and former Southern Railway 280 number 385. Both of these steam engines were acquired from the Virginia Blue Ridge Railway. The picturesque little tourist trains ran until 1980. Meanwhile, in 1976, the Susquehanna itself was again forced to declare bankruptcy as revenues fell and bills could not be paid. By 1979, service on the railroad extended only from Little Ferry to Butler, a distance of 27 miles. The few short branches on the eastern end of the line were maintained to serve local freight customers. From a roster which once boasted 24 Alco road switchers and 3 GP18s, only the Jeeps and 4 decrepit Alcos were operable. Once a powerful, thriving railroad, the Susquehanna had become a pathetic, rusting, 10-mile-an-hour, stub-ended shell of its former self. At almost the same time that the Susquehanna was preparing to abandon its passenger service, a group of businessmen in upstate Oneonta, New York, purchased a former U.S. Army 060 steam locomotive from the Virginia Blue Ridge Railway, the same outfit which later sold the Morris County Central its engines. The consortium also bought 2.6 miles of the recently abandoned New York Central Ulster and Delaware branch. Thus was formed the Delaware-Otsego, or DO line, named for the counties through which the railroad passes. Under the direction of General Manager Walter Rich, the Little Short Line carried passengers until it was abandoned in 1971 to make way for the construction of a new interstate highway. Fortunately, the DO system survived by moving its tourist line to another nearby location. The 16-mile-long Cooperstown branch was purchased from the Delaware and Hudson Railway and renamed the Cooperstown and Charlotte Valley Railroad. DO crews operated both freight and passenger service over the line. Over the next few years, the DO system grew out of the tourist business and began to expand by purchasing other lines in New York State. These included the former Erie-Lackawanna-Richfield Springs branch near Utica, dubbed the Central New York Line by the Delaware-Otsego, and the Fonda Johnstown and Gloversville Railroad, a former electric interurban line northwest of Schenectady. Delaware-Otsego's first rail operations outside New York began in 1976, when it was named designated operator of the Lackawaxen and Sturbridge Railroad, formerly the Erie Railroad Honesdale branch. This picturesque 25-mile-long railroad extends from Honesdale to Lackawaxen, where it connects with the former Erie Railroad Delaware Division main line. Although motive power is usually a diesel switcher, Steam power made an appearance in 1979 when George Hart's former Canadian Pacific 460 number 972 pulled several passenger excursions over the line. The trip celebrated the sesquicentennial of the Sturbridge Lion, one of America's first steam locomotives. The destinies of the Delaware-Otsego system and the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railroad merged in 1980, when the United States Bankruptcy Court approved the DO's offer of $5 million to purchase the line. By 1983, the 27 miles of track between Little Ferry and Butler was rehabilitated, enabling service to existing online customers to be maintained. Most importantly, Walter Rich and the DO system had saved the Susquehanna from abandonment. More trackage was added to the DO system in 1982 with the purchase of several Conrail lines in upstate New York. Included were the 95-mile line from Binghamton to Utica and the 62-mile line from Shenango Forks to Jamesville, 7 miles south of Syracuse. Both lines were originally part of the Lackawanna Railroad. They now became the northern division of the Susquehanna Railroad, the name DO had recently given to all of its major railroad holdings. An ex-Long Island Railroad high-nose Alco C420, number 2002 and later 260, was purchased from the short line Virginia and Maryland to handle the increased traffic in the Northern Division. Another C420, this time an ex-L&N low-nose model, was obtained from the Maryland and Delaware to help out. It was given road number 2000. To connect the Northern Division lines to the Susquehanna proper in New Jersey, Conrail and Delaware-Otsego also agreed upon a trackage and haulage rights agreement whereby the Susquehanna could operate its own mainline trains between Binghamton and Passaic Junction, New Jersey. Upon departing Binghamton, Susquehanna trains would be routed over the former Erie, Delaware Division main line, now known as Conrail's Southern Tier District, to Campbell Hall, New York. From that point, the trains would continue south over the former Erie-Graham line to Passaic Junction, New Jersey, near Saddlebrook, where there was an interchange with the Susquehanna. Home rails would then be traversed for the short run to Little Ferry. To handle the haulage trains, 5 ex-New York Central Alco C430s were obtained and reconditioned for service on the Binghamton to Little Ferry trains. These locomotives were painted in the popular Susquehanna Yellow Jacket scheme. By July 1983, Susquehanna trains began to operate over the Delaware Division Graham Line route. During the 1982 negotiations, DO and Conrail worked out alternate trackage rights which the Susquehanna could exercise if Conrail were to cancel the existing haulage agreements. This alternate route would again have Susquehanna trains running over the ex-Erie main line from Binghamton to Maybrook, New York, near Campbell Hall, where they would be switched to Conrail's former Lehigh and Hudson River line extending south to Warwick. At Warwick, the trains would continue south over the former L&HR line to Sparta Junction, which had also been purchased by Delaware-Otsego in 1982. At Sparta Junction, Susquehanna trains could enter the original Susquehanna main line via a special track connection. The trains could then continue on to Little Ferry on the old Susquehanna route. In order to utilize this route, however, Conrail would have to cancel the existing haulage agreements. The Susquehanna would then be required to rebuild its newly purchased 22-mile stretch of Lehigh and Hudson River track between Warwick and Sparta Junction, reopen the long dormant 25-mile section of Susquehanna track from Sparta Junction to Butler, install the new connection at Sparta Junction, and upgrade the remainder of the Susquehanna to mainline standards. By 1985, as Susquehanna haulage trains rolled over the old Erie Main Line, two additional rail properties, the Staten Island Rapid Transit Freight Line and the little Rahway Valley Railroad, had joined the DO system. The stage was now set for the Susquehanna's transformation from a collection of disjointed short lines into a major regional rail system. The Sea Land Corporation, a major operator of international intermodal freight transportation, approached Conrail about constructing a container transfer facility near its shiploading complex at Port Elizabeth, New Jersey. Sea Land, which was expanding its operations to the East Coast, required a separate transfer facility, but Conrail merely offered partial use of an existing container site at Croxton Yard in the Jersey Meadowlands. When no agreement was reached, Sea Land began discussions with the Delaware Otsego system, which happily sold them a 22-acre portion of land adjacent to the Little Ferry Terminal. Sea Land began constructing the new container terminal and awarded the Susquehanna, Delaware and Hudson, and Chessie system a contract to operate the Chicago to New York segment of its transcontinental twin-stack container trains. Conrail, which had been completely outflanked, handed over the first Sea Land train to the spunky Susquehanna on August 4th, 1985. These trains, dubbed stack packs, began to operate over the Delaware Division Graham Line route described earlier. A number of ex-Burlington Northern SD-45 diesels and two F-45s were purchased by the Susquehanna and soon began to arrive. These units gradually replaced the aging Alcos on the long-distance runs. When Conrail sought to raise DO's haulage rates in early 1986, the original contract had to be canceled. This allowed the Susquehanna to exercise its trackage rights between Binghamton, Campbell Hall, and Warwick. Throughout the spring and summer of 1986, a massive $8 million refurbishing of the line was carried out to prepare it for the operation of the stack-pack trains. The 25 miles of abandoned track between Butler and Sparta Junction were completely rebuilt. The new connection between the Susquehanna and the Lehigh and Hudson River was constructed at Sparta Junction. Bridges were replaced and strengthened. New ties, 110,000 of them, were installed. Ballast trains distributed over 50,000 tons of the crushed rock along the line to improve the roadbed. Jordan spreaders were dispatched to improve clearances and remove foliage which had blocked the right-of-way. Finally, everything was ready. In mid-October 1986, a special clearance test train ran over the reborn railroad. No difficulties were reported, and the stack packers began to roll over the new line. Big-time railroading had returned to the Susquehanna. This program offers a video portrait of the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railroad in action. You'll view its operations in the New York metropolitan area, follow a local freight complete with caboose to Sparta Junction, and sample some of the activities on the Northern Division. Then you'll thrill to the sights and sounds of mainline railroading as we chase a Susquehanna stack packer across Storuca, down the Delaware, and onto home rails. You'll also enjoy some vintage film footage as we present some then and now scenes at appropriate locations. So climb aboard for a tour of the modern Susquehanna as Mark I Video presents Susquehanna Spectacular. Before following a local freight from Little Ferry to Sparta Junction, let's take a look at two Susquehanna short lines in the New York City metropolitan area. The Staten Island Railway is an industrial switching road which joined the DO system in 1985. The railroad, which was constructed by the B&O and later absorbed into the Chessie system, begins at St. George on Staten Island. The portion from St. George to Tottenville, near the Verrazano Bridge, is operated as a rapid transit line by the New York City Transit Authority. The railroad crosses the Arthur Kill into New Jersey on the world's longest vertical lift drawbridge, an impressive 558-foot-long span referred to as AK. Cars are interchanged with Conrail at Cranford, New Jersey. The usual motive power on the Staten Island Railway is former C&O SW9 switcher number 5091, now Susquehanna number 120. Nearby is the 5-mile-long Rahway Valley Railroad, DO's latest acquisition. Track extends from Conrail's former CNJ interchange at Roselle to Springfield. Two GE 70-tonners were included when DO bought the little railroad and are the usual motive power on the line. A visit to the property in April 1988, however, found Rahway Valley trains in the charge of restored New York, Ontario, and Western NW2 number 116. This engine really is the original O&W 116. When the railroad was abandoned in 1957, the engine was sold to the New York Central and survived through Penn Central and Conrail to be sold to a DO director who had it repainted into original O&W colors. The E8s, by the way, were stored at the Kenilworth Engine House by New Jersey Transit, pending delivery to an individual in Ohio. We are now ready to follow a Susquehanna local freight from Little Ferry to Sparta Junction. Between Little Ferry and Butler, the railroad passes through a very heavily populated area with many online industries. Several substantial bridges are encountered along this section of the line. West of Butler, on the newly reopened segment of the Susquehanna, the terrain becomes more rugged as trains ascend the grade to Beaver Lake. Most westbound trains originate at the Little Ferry Terminal near the Hackensack River in southeast Bergen County, New Jersey. This train is crossing the short trestle at Overpeck Creek and will soon arrive at Passaic Junction. The GP-18 will be dropped off to handle some local switching chores, and the two SD-45s will then pick up a short freight consist. The caboose will be used by an ABC TV camera crew working on a report about the vanishing caboose for Good Morning America. At Wyckoff, the train paused to pick up the ABC crew and then moved on to a passing siding a short distance west of the station to let an eastbound double-stack train go by. The trestle at Oakland, which crosses the Ramapo River, has always been a favorite spot for photographers. One fine afternoon in the early 1940s, Ted Gay caught a Russian decapod heading an eastbound freight. A pusher was necessary to get the train over the steep grades near Campgaw. Soon afterward, two Alco S2 diesels powered another eastbound over the bridge. More than 40 years later, the still waters of the Ramapo River provide the perfect setting for a reflection shot as our westbound freight traverses the trestle. At Butler, the two shiny SD-45s briefly slow down for the benefit of photographers. The big engines soon rev up for the run to Sparta Junction. Upon arrival at Sparta Junction, the train unloads the ABC crew and then moves on to the new connecting track. After some switching moves, the train will return to Little Ferry. Binghamton, New York is an important point on the Susquehanna. Both Northern Division lines originate here. At Binghamton, stack trains are interchanged between the Susquehanna and the Guilford system for their eastward journey down the Delaware en route to Little Ferry, or to continue westward to Buffalo. The eastern leg of the Northern Division, referred to as the Utica Branch, begins in Binghamton and extends northeastward to Utica, a distance of 95 miles. From Binghamton to Sherburne, the rails follow the Shenango River. From Paris, just south of Utica, to Waterville, southbound trains must ascend a 1.55% grade. On a sunny afternoon in April 1988, the Susquehanna's recently acquired and only GP38, number 2012, struggles uphill with a short freight consist. We'll follow her south through the lovely countryside as far as Sangerfield. The western leg of the Susquehanna's northern division, referred to as the Syracuse branch, extends from Shenango Forks, 11 miles north of Binghamton, to Jamesville, about 7 miles south of Syracuse. This line passes through the picturesque Tionioga Valley, which is primarily farm country. In April 1988, the Susquehanna operated several passenger excursions between Cortland and Marathon as part of an annual festival. The passenger extras were operated push-pull style to eliminate runaround moves. Alco Century 420, number 260, formerly Long Island Railroad number 221, is shown here after a heavy snowstorm. The Sealand Corporation operates an international intermodal container service between points in the Far East, Europe, the Middle East, and the Caribbean, with the United States serving as a land bridge between East and West. Containers are loaded on ships and transported to Tacoma, Washington, or Long Beach, California on the west coast of the United States, or to Port Elizabeth, New Jersey on the east coast. Upon reaching their destinations, the ships are unloaded and the containers placed onto special highway trailers. Some containers are delivered locally, while the majority are delivered to a Sealand container terminal for loading onto conventional or double-stack transporter cars. The specially designed Gunderson double-stack rail cars feature an articulated design with 5 platforms to a set. 10 35 to 45-foot containers can be loaded onto each articulated unit. Sealand trains usually carry from 200 to 270 containers. Transcontinental stack trains require 5 days to complete a coast-to-coast journey. In the case of an eastbound run, the train reaches Chicago on the 3rd day after departure and is then handed over to the chassis system, now referred to as CSX, for the run to Buffalo. Upon its arrival at Buffalo, the D&H, now operated by the Guilford system, conveys the trains via Conrail trackage rights to Binghamton, where the Susquehanna takes over. We begin our chase of an eastbound stack packer as a Guilford train approaches Binghamton from the west. On this portion of the program, the scenes are presented in sequential geographic order. You'll see a number of different trains which were videotaped over a period of several months. After departing Binghamton, Susquehanna trains operate via trackage rights over Conrail's Southern Tier District Main Line, formerly the Erie Railroad's Delaware Division. One of the highlights of the line is the world-famous Storrucka Viaduct, 23 miles south of Binghamton. As viewed in this 1958 film, the viaduct is 1,040 feet long and consists of 17 sandstone arches. "30 years later, eastbound Susquehanna trains create a grand spectacle of sight and sound as they ascend the grade to Gulf's summit. For the 90-mile run from Deposit to Port Jervis, the railroad runs along the highly scenic Delaware River. New York Routes 17 and 97 parallel the tracks for many miles, presenting a variety of interesting photo locations. The railroad crosses back and forth between New York and Pennsylvania several times between Narrowsburg and Port Jervis. Black Mill Rift, the tracks crossed the Delaware River from Pennsylvania back into New York. A quartet of Erie Jeeps is shown crossing the bridge in 1958. Until about 15 years ago, Port Jervis, New York was a very busy railroad town. A number of through passenger trains once stopped here. Commuter service to Hoboken has survived to the present day and is currently operated by Metro North and New Jersey Transit. But the large freight yards and other facilities have disappeared, as seen in these views taken 15 years apart. Early in 1988, two Susquehanna stack packers staged a meet on the two remaining mainline tracks. Leaving Port Jervis, the railroad climbs up grade as it heads east. The top of the grade is reached at Otisville Tunnel. Howells was the junction of the Graham Line and the now abandoned Erie Main Line to Harriman via Middletown, Goshen, and Chester. In 1974, an Erie-Lackawanna hotshot roared under the highway bridge. 14 years later, a Susquehanna double-stack train is shown meeting a westbound Conrail freight at the same location. Approaching Campbell Hall, the Graham Line crosses the long-abandoned O and W Main Line on a massive steel bridge. Between July 1983 and October 1986, Susquehanna haulage and stack trains continued east through Campbell Hall over the Graham Line. One of the scenic highlights of this route is Moodna Viaduct near Salisbury Mills, a 3,201-foot steel trestle which rises over 200 feet above Moodna Creek. In early 1986, a Susquehanna stack train roared through Ramsey, New Jersey, on the former Erie Main Line en route to Passaic Junction. When the Susquehanna began using its new route to New Jersey late in 1986, its trains were required to leave the Graham Line at Campbell Hall and run over a short connecting track to the old New Haven Railroad yard at Maybrook. Since no direct connection to the old Lehigh and Hudson River Railroad presently exists, the engines must change ends in a series of saw-by moves before continuing their run. A runaround track is not available for this maneuver. Initially, an engine was assigned to Maybrook to pull the train past the road power and tack it onto the other end, as demonstrated by the 3000. More recently, the preferred method of operation is to split the road lash-up and use two engine sets to rearrange the train. Upon completion of the saw-by moves, the stack train slowly enters Conrail's portion of the L&HR for the run to Warwick. Now, this is a highly scenic route with an abundance of good photo locations.
St. Francis, we're pulling Hudson Junction. We're not clear of the runner yet, over.
Clear the runner yet. Grant, you're okay if you would there. Let me know when you're clear.
Warwick, New York was once an important point on the Lehigh and Hudson River Railroad. L&HR Motive Power consisted of a small fleet of Alco RS-3s and Alco C-420s. The Centuries are shown here working the Warwick Yard in 1973. The handsome stone depot at Warwick is shown at night with a westbound stack train passing by. After passing through Warwick Yard, Susquehanna trains enter home rails at Pelton Road. More picturesque scenery lies ahead on the run to Sparta Junction. At Sparta Junction, stack trains leave the former Lehigh and Hudson River, traverse the new connection, and finally enter the original Susquehanna main line. Departing Sparta Junction, eastbound trains ascend a steep grade up Sparta Mountain all the way to Beaver Lake. From Charlottesburg Reservoir east to Little Ferry, the tracks pass through a very densely populated area. Chasing Susquehanna trains becomes increasingly difficult from this point on, but the many bridges and trestles on this section of the line can make the effort very worthwhile. In June 1988, the Susquehanna acquired its first new engine since the GP-18s were delivered in 1962. 4 big Dash 840Bs have arrived to help carry the railroad into the 1990s. Susquehanna yellow and black never looked better.